Middlesbrough, Leeds, 1989. This match will forever stick in the memory of those who were there, because there was nearly a repeat of a Hillsborough-style tragedy. First Middlesbrough fan Clive tells his story.
I'll never forget that cold December day in 1989. Ayresome Park was buzzing with the kind of tension that only comes with a high-stakes match. Leeds were chasing promotion, and we were fighting to keep our heads above water. The rivalry felt electric, but none of us expected the day to teeter so close to tragedy. From the start, it was clear the away pen was packed tighter than I'd ever seen. You couldn't help but glance over at it. It was impossible to ignore. Leeds fans were crammed shoulder to shoulder, spilling out into every available inch of space. Even before the match kicked off, you could sense it wasn't right. The early goal made things worse. Leeds scored after just 10 minutes and the away end erupted. I could see about 100 of them in the Holgate near me, jumping up and down in celebration. That's when the police moved in. They did what they always did back then, marched the problem out in a show of force down the touchline, past the chicken run, while we jeered and shouted. But instead of taking them somewhere safe, they shoved them into the already heaving away pen. I remember turning to my mate and saying, "They're asking for trouble putting them in there." We didn't have to wait long. About 20 minutes later, Leeds had another good chance, and the surge began. You could see it ripple through the pen, bodies pushing forward like a wave. The people at the front were smashed up against those brutal spiked fences, struggling and screaming. I'll never forget the sound, the panic in their voices, the sheer terror. And then it happened. Fans started climbing over the spikes to escape. Grown men, women, and kids. It didn't matter. Some were hoisting children over the barriers, while others scrambled up themselves, shredding clothes and skin on the vicious metal. A few managed to climb into the home section next to them, just desperate to get away. It was chaos. The stewards looked lost, and the police just stood there frozen. None of us in the Holgate could believe what we were seeing. We started chanting, "You don't know what you're doing." It wasn't just anger. It was fear. After Hillsborough, we all knew what could happen. We knew the stakes. Out of nowhere, Howard Wilkinson, the Leeds manager, sprinted to the fence. You could see him shouting and waving, trying to get someone, anyone, to act. Eventually the gates opened and the crush eased. But it felt like a lifetime. By then, stretcher bearers were running onto the pitch. I saw kids being carried off, pale and shaking, and grown men slumped against the barriers. The referee stopped the match, and we all just stood there, watching in silence. The players huddled in groups, looking over at the chaos. It was surreal. For 15 minutes, Ayresome Park wasn't about football. It was about survival. In the end, 19 Leeds fans needed medical treatment. 5 went to the hospital, and one poor lad just 10 years old had to stay overnight. It's a miracle no one died. When the match resumed, it felt like no one cared anymore. Leeds went on to win 2-0, but who could focus on the score? For me, the memory isn't about the goals or the result. It's about that crush, those fences, and the helplessness of standing there, watching it all unfold. There was normally trouble after Leeds at home, but after seeing what happened this day, no one could be bothered. Everyone walked away in a daze, really. The crazy thing is, this wasn't unique. It wasn't even surprising back then. Every travelling fan had a story about a close call. I remember being packed like sardines at Goodison Park, shoved into blind alleys at Derby, or funneled into pitch-black tunnels at Sunderland. It was normal, if you could call it that. We put up with it because we had no choice. But that day at Ayresome Park hit differently. Maybe it was because of Hillsborough, or maybe it was seeing kids, just kids, being lifted over those spikes. Whatever it was, it stuck with me. It still does. The spikes at Ayresome were beyond belief. If there had been a serious crush on the Holgate, it would have been carnage if people tried to get over the fences. All to stop a few school kids running on the pitch generally, and even if it was really hooligans, hardly the end of the world, is it? The alley up to the Holgate was a real time bomb. I remember a few people getting a bit panicky in the cup tie against Everton in '88. I hope we see some cops in the dock over this. Perhaps some of those who ran football as well. Football's come a long way since then. The terraces are gone, the fences torn down, and the game feels safer now. But for those of us who lived through days like that, the memories never really fade. Ayresome Park could have been another tragedy. That it wasn't is down to luck more than anything else. And as much as I love the game, I'll never forget how close we came to losing it all. Leeds fan Barry told us, "It all started to go wrong before the match, really, when they only gave us 2,100 tickets. Leeds were chasing the title, and we could have filled their old ground, but that's all we got. The local police provided buses for Leeds fans to get to the stadium from the station. I was on the top deck next to two local policemen when one of them was radioed with a message saying the Leeds end was already full. This was 30 mins before kickoff. The policeman said to me, 'Don't worry, it'll be fine.' Once inside, the police had to deal with some trouble in the Middlesbrough home end, the Holgate, and they took hundreds of Leeds out of that end and the side end next to it and brought them to our tiny, already overcrowded pen, adding to the crush. We were telling the police, 'No more.' I distinctly remember shouting to a copper, 'Remember Hillsborough.' He didn't take too kindly to it, but I think he realized it wasn't Leeds fans trying it on. The Leeds fans were genuinely getting crushed, and to be honest, it was all the police's fault. They were the ones who put the spillover Leeds fans in the pen. If this didn't happen, the crush would never have happened. Some desperate Leeds fans climbed the horrible razor wire fence and were cut open in the process. Others, like myself, waited and prayed the police would open the gate and relieve the pressure. It took them over 5 agonizing minutes to do anything, and that was only because the Leeds manager realized something was amiss and stopped the match. 19. Leeds fans were injured, 5 taken to hospital. One of the newspapers said it was because of Leeds hooligans. It wasn't. I wrote to the FA, the local police and Leeds, yet only got a reply from Leeds. This was after Hillsborough. We thank Clive and Barry for their recollections. It's clear there were a lot of Leeds in the Holgate end, normally reserved for the home fans. It's also clear the police didn't know what they were facing during the crush. You would have thought they would have had adequate training, especially after the Hillsborough disaster only a few months earlier. A very lucky escape for everyone involved. Thanks for watching. Did you enjoy this slightly different event from the 80s? Like, share and subscribe, as it really helps our channel grow to give you bigger, better content.